Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Beam and Danny Hogger as they explore the why of teaching.
And welcome back to Hour 3 of the 2019 Action Research Conference. Danny Hogger here, Tavis Beam, and a brand new guest. But a guest that's familiar to me, a teacher that is not far away from my heart nor my classroom, mind you, 2 doors down, not 3 doors down the band, but it's Josh Call. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Danny. How are you doing?
Oh, going a little loopy. And having a great time talking to teachers and enjoying this process and kind of battling a fever. So things are fantastic and swirling around. Man, I see dancing dragons. And I'm so glad that you would join us to talk. So we just met pretty recently. You're in your 8th week as a long-term sub.
Oh, yeah. We go way back.
Way back. Yes, I've known you for literally months. And how is it in your long-term position right now, teaching math? What's going on, and how's that process been for you?
It's going really well, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for having me on here. I'm a big fan of the show. It's going really well right now, but I mean, as any sub, especially long-term subs can attest, it can be crazy walking into somebody else's room and you're literally stepping into another pair of shoes as an entirely different person. So the transition was 2 weeks before spring break. I stepped into to fill in for a teacher who was on leave for a little bit. And so the first thing that I was concerned with was basically, how do I get you guys? I'm a math long-term sub, by the way, so I know that you guys have had a lot of English and the humanities guests on here, but so this is a math perspective. So
You know what, though? They didn't really count. Get it?
Oh my gosh.
Puns.
All
Cheers.
the puns.
Continue.
I was going to make a reciprocal teaching pun
Yeah, I just
during the last one.
alienated the whole, okay. And what is that? So what's unique about that, do you think?
About stepping in as a long-term sub?
For math specifically?
For math specifically, so we were kind of on a pretty strict pace, especially going into some standardized testing, and as we're going into the AP testing season, there's kind of a lot of pressure to keep going with the pace, even as you're trying to get to know students, because I'm with them for the rest of the school year. So there's kind of that pressure of, I want to be able to get to know you, build a relationship, right? Because relationships are key in the classroom. I want to build those relationships, but at the same time, we have to keep going with this unit that we're in the middle of so that you guys can learn this, so that we can have testing before break, and so that we can come back and be going and actually start out like getting to know each other.
And do you have a math background? Is this something that you feel comfortable teaching?
So yes, I do have a math background. If you go back about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I started at Cal Poly as a math major. I did really well in math in high school. But at Cal Poly, I decided to switch into psychology, just because I wanted to go a little bit more into a personal realm than into a strictly math realm. I wanted to be more educated in how to help people, how to help them learn things, think about things differently. And so psychology is really helpful for that, and it's obviously really helpful for us all as teachers too. Mm-hmm. But the concepts that I was going through with students were some concepts that I hadn't really worked with in about 10 years. So I was very much having to catch up and bring them along with me too. So that was a tough transition.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
You don't use it, you lose it, and
exactly.
got to dust off the cobwebs on that.
Oh yeah, did a lot of dusting, frantic dusting.
Josh ingratiated himself to a lot of the teachers at our high school. It was Teacher Appreciation this week, and he had each of his students write thank you notes to teachers that had inspired them. Keyword inspiring, #inspiring teachers. And I thought that was really cool. I got a few notes, and it was meaningful and kind of perks up your day, perks up your week. I don't know that a lot of teachers would take the time to do that in math, but as you said to me at the day, I was like, just because it's math doesn't mean we can't be like appreciative and can't be writing. Tell us where the idea came from and why you decided to do that and what the outcome has been.
So the idea came from 2 places. One of them is from my amazing wife, who is an English teacher at another town in school. And so that's something that she has done for, I think, 5 years with her students. And as an English teacher, it makes a lot of sense to be communicating through written word, writing letters to teachers. But it just struck me as something that, especially in one of the hardest times of the school year, is you're just trying to get there through those last 5 or 6 weeks, that everybody can use a pick-me-up. It reminds students of what they appreciate about their teachers. it reminds teachers of why they do what they do.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that we can all do in our life is to formalize a process of where we reflect on what is valuable in our life and taking action and actually following through and telling those people how important they are.
Yeah.
What's your pathway in education now? Because you've mentioned psychology, you've mentioned a math background. Why did you turn to education as a career?
It was a very winding road for me. My dad was a math teacher for 20 years, and my wife is an English teacher. And the path from marrying my wife after college, we moved back to my hometown, last place I expected to end it up, and was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to. I hadn't landed on teaching at all yet. My thought was to go into ministry, and after doing a few odd jobs over the first year or two, I was able to actually get a job as a youth pastor at a church in town. And I worked there with middle school students for 2.5 years and loved it. The volunteers are amazing. The students are a lot of fun. You get to just kind of get into life with them, and you get to talk about what's going on. You get to teach them and just have a lot of fun. You get to goof around. But over time, I really found myself enjoying that lesson preparation, that teaching part, talking with students about life, because so much of teaching, right, is more than just the instruction from the front of the room, right? A lot of it is that life-on-life time with you talking with students that stay in at lunch or come after school. We are all in this because we want to help students. We care for them. And as I was ending my time as a youth pastor, realizing that I would need to look somewhere else for full-time work at the time. There just wasn't a position open. I started to look to the world of teaching because that was a skill that I really saw myself and that something that I really enjoyed doing. So I turned into initially teaching English. That's what I wanted to do. That was my shot. So I started studying for the CSETs, and I stepped into the district as a sub. And very quickly, there was a request, an opening for a long-term math sub. She was looking at my transcripts and said, "Hey, you've got a lot of units back from college, units that I hadn't, worked with for 10 years or so." She asked if I felt comfortable, and I told her, yeah, I'd feel comfortable stepping in as a math sub. I know that I can still recognize a lot of the material. I can still jump right back in and still be effective as a teacher. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think that I could give students, something valuable. So I stepped in and loved it. It was just jumping right back into the world that I had lived in before. And that was really it. That was the magic moment. Just after 2 weeks, I decided, okay, I want to go for math. I want to start teaching math. I want to be able to break these concepts down and really bring math to simplicity for them.
It's really starting to add up for you, huh?
It is. It really is.
That's
These jokes are
puns.
multiplying.
I get, that's good.
You missed my division when I said it.
Well, I didn't really think it was a subtraction from what we were talking about.
I'm not really adding much to this conversation right now. Bam!
That's
All the
beautiful.
operations in less than 10 seconds.
I don't think we do it again if we try.
Yeah, we don't want this to get negative now.
Oh my goodness. But still, you know what? The absolute value of this conversation is something that's beyond reproach.
This is getting exponentially worse.
Yes. That was a beautiful thing that just happened there.
This is.
So, in the midst of this long-term sub position, something else happened, right? Another right place, right time kind of event. What happened next?
Yeah. So as I've been long-term subbing, obviously looking for a long-term position, been taking CSETs, been getting ready to start the credential program this summer at Cal State East Bay.
Okay.
Cal State East Bay. So I'm really excited for that to start up in just another few weeks. Goodness sakes, where's the time going?
Yeah.
Where is it? So in that process, I decided that I was going to become an intern teacher. So I applied for a math position at the district and got accepted. And so I'm going to be stepping in at another school in our town, teaching math next year from the first time and taking the credential program at the same time. So
That's exciting.
it's daunting, but very
Don't
exciting.
forget to breathe. That's my.
Oh my goodness. I can breathe on the drive out there from right after school to 4:30. That short drive.
It's an exciting time. Congratulations and well earned.
Wonderful journey.
It's
Thank
nice
you.
when things fall into place and validate the decisions that you're making in the course when you just seem to happen to fall in the right place.
Yeah, it is. And it's been a really valuable opportunity to be a long-term sub before stepping into teaching, especially the way that I'm going to do it, where I'm jumping in credential program and teaching at the same time. I feel like being a long-term sub in a math classroom has really given me the opportunity to try a lot of new things. You guys, I think a couple weeks ago, I had Dr. Randall Sampson from Welcome to the Grind. He wrote that book. And he was talking, I remember him talking about, in his first year, he got the advice to try a bunch of different things. And so as a long-term sub, I've kind of had that opportunity where I've been able to try. I've been able to step alongside teachers because, it's the middle of the quarter. We need lessons. So I'm going to other teachers to see what they're doing for pacing, what they're doing for content, what their presentation strategies are. And I've been really able to get in, observe a lot of teachers, talk with them, and find out really a wide variety of different strategies and be able to try those on and see what works with my style.
Yeah, and there's a fantastic resource on Instagram and Twitter of all the teachers talking about different resources there too. I know that the math teachers really communicate a lot over that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value too. Just different cross-disciplinary strategies.
Yeah.
You guys talked with Sarah Musamechi about reciprocal teaching. And so that is something that really is valuable for building literary comprehension, but I think that's also something that can be valuable for building numeracy, where having students teach each other and pay attention to different aspects of a math lesson can really help them develop even greater critical thinking skills about a different function we're talking about, or about graphing, or different techniques and tools that we're using in math. So there's a lot of value cross-disciplinary where we can learn from each other.
I think it's those cross-disciplinary lessons that really lend themselves to having student motivation because they see more meaning behind it, because they're inherently more practical.
They are. And
it's not so abstract and this little box.
Right. And that's, I think math is one of the most infamous for being just abstract, and where does this, where does the rubber meet the road in my life?
We got to get past that. In my woodshop class all the time, what is this math? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did nobody ever tell you
what this class is? It is math.
And that's what's great about those classes, especially I love the idea of woodshop. I've never been able to do it, but I've always wanted to.
Come by sometime.
Right? Because it's one of those areas where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Everything that I've learned, how do I find out how big this board needs to be? Well, here's your length, here's your width. Let's look at this. How do we make this the right depth? How do we shape this the right way? It's all math.
You hit on something too, that it is an area that's notorious for being inside a box. It's also in some places notorious for students coming in with a preconceived notion of what they're going to get out of that class and how their attitude's going to be coming in. Have you seen that, and do you work actively to reverse that or change that direction?
I've seen it differently so far. I haven't had students walking in fresh from day one. I was actually the one walking in fresh into another teacher's classroom. So I did get to see for the first couple weeks how these students were coming in ready to learn. And so I guess that's kind of an accelerated version of watching how students react to math class. But you see the stereotypical, everybody's kind of leaning back, watching what you're doing. And so I knew immediately that I wanted to nip that in the bud. I did not want it to be a passive, okay, I'm going to sit here and not really learn anything while the teacher talks at me. Right? I'm not saying that's what the teacher before me did. She had a lot of really good strategies as well. But from what I saw, from what the students were giving me, I knew that I needed to change what I was doing. And so that's when I really went to other teachers and said, hey, how do you make this engaging for your students? I even asked the students as I was passing out progress reports after break. Some of them started complaining about why they were never going to pass so-and-so's class, or why this was really hard. And they got me thinking, what is it that these teachers do that make them feel this way? Or what would help these students feel like they could succeed? So I kind of went to the students, and in each of my classes just said, okay, guys, I'm going to start becoming a teacher pretty soon. I kind of already am as a sub. But I want to learn from you guys. What do teachers do that helps? What do teachers do that makes math more difficult for you? Because I want to know what helps these students. And I was surprised to hear their responses. Because, I think that especially in math, and depending on the school you're in, students can have a reputation of sometimes there's always kind of a complaintive aspect to it, like, I want to do less work, everything's just too hard. But that's not what I heard from my students at all. I actually heard some very well thought out responses. Things that help them aren't just, no work, But hey, when we have color-coded notes, that really helps because math can look just like a wall of text. When we have time to discuss with each other, that really helps. Something that they said hinders is just unnecessary busy work or work that's given without explanation. And I think that that's a trap that can be easy for us math teachers to fall into is, I understand it and we only have so much time in a class, right? So if I want you to engage with it yourself, I've got to give a pretty short lesson and then I've got to turn you guys around. What that can easily turn into, though, is the 4 or 5 students who are following know what to do. But other students who are maybe a little bit more passive, who maybe weren't paying as much attention, they feel thrown into the next stage without knowing what to do. And that can be really frustrating. But in hearing about what other teachers did, once we turn around to start working on this on our own, he goes around and he follows up with each of us, asks us questions, and responds with where we're at right here. So there's a teacher who goes around and works with each student individually after they have time to work with each other. So hearing these different responses was really great because students actually have an idea, and I've got juniors and seniors mostly, so these are students who have a little more educational experience, but they are aware of what helps them as learners. And so that was a really valuable thing for me to pick up on. And it might be something that anybody who's listening might want to try with their students, is ask what makes your subject engaging, what other teachers have done that have really helped them to engage with the material before. And there's a lot that we can learn from each other indirectly through our students.
Absolutely. And you're going to get more buy-in right away just by asking that question.
It shows them that you care. It shows them that you're not trying to do your show. You want to do what is most helpful for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a great way because if you wonder what they think about you, ask. You'll find out. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They'll tell you. They'll be honest, and it's
Always.
constructive. I love when we're in the middle of a lesson or I'm planning, and it's either we have a Patriot Plus session where they have time in between. Say, how would you do this differently? What kind of things would you like to do in class tomorrow? What do you think would be fun to do relating to government? How can we change our election and make it better in class? And they have helped immensely and thought of things from their perspective, which is much more informative than mine.
Oh, yeah.
They're the ones that are going to do the things that I'm suggesting. So
They have an opinion on everything, so that's always helpful. When you ask an opinion, you're going to get some.
Yeah. I want to ask you, what's the most valuable thing that a teacher can do for a substitute? Like if I'm going to be absent.
Oh, good question.
Lesson plans.
Well, yeah.
Lesson plans is the number one most useful thing, so that you step in and not just a lesson plan for that day. I mean, I know day subs are different from long-term subs. One of the most helpful things that my teacher left for me was she gave me, here's the teacher who is the best to go to for this subject. Here's the teacher that's best to go to. So I had 2 people right off the bat that I was able to go to for pre-calculus and one for algebra 2. And that was hugely helpful. One got me set up with here's everything for pre-calc, and that was so helpful. So I was able to focus on what I was going to do and tweak for algebra 2 while I knew that pre-calc was going to be taken care of. So that was really helpful, knowing who to go talk to and who to ask for questions.
Giving you lifelines and resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She introduced me to the local lunch hangout too, and to everybody there, which was great because this is, basically going to be my teacher family for the rest of the quarter.
Right.
So that's where I met Danny, and that was just a great other lifeline of people to connect to. That's really, I think, being a sub can feel very much like coming late to the party. It can feel a lot like being left adrift. If there's nobody that you've been connected to, it's really hard, I think, to step in with confidence to a group and say, hey.
Yeah.
So being introduced was really helpful. And I'd say that would probably be one of the more helpful things. If you have a long-term sub that's going to be stepping in for you, be sure to introduce them and even let them shadow you for a little bit. That was also really helpful, is I was able to shadow my teacher. I was able to experience how she interacted with the students. And I think maybe even more importantly than that is to look at the routines that they had. Every classroom is run on routines.
Right.
And so the more that the sub knows about those routines, the easier they can give your students a consistent experience, which makes it less jarring for the students as well.
And this really speaks back to what Karen was talking about earlier today. She did her research on communication.
Okay.
And communication of all styles, but one specific one is not being isolated and in that collegiality, how important that family unit is for a teacher's well-being.
And not just that, but when you have lunch with a diverse array, like we have a large school, then eating with people outside your subject area is great too. Like you said, having 2 points of contact for your maths questions were good. having two school families that you can go to just socialize with is also refreshing, because then you're not going to get backed into a discussion about your subject matter and everything like that. You have some freedom and some rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't always have to talk shop. It's nice to talk about, other things.
And sometimes amazing
Sometimes
things.
that happens. Teachers
Sometimes
talk about
amazing
something
things.
other than teaching.
Josh Call, it's been a real pleasure to have
thank
you
you for
on.
being
Had no
here.
idea we'd run into you today. I love when small world stuff happens, but even more, it's great to meet people who become more important in your life, and I hope that we'll see a lot more of you even when you move to your new school site. You've been a really great addition to our school and to our show, so thanks so much for being our guest.
Danny and Tavis, thanks for having me.
And don't forget to catch us at the Contra Costa Fair. March is 2 months ago, so we're in May now. May 16th at 4 o'clock, and come see us perform. It's going to be a rocking good time.
It'll be great.